Okay. Well, good morning, members. Good morning and welcome to the meeting of Dorset Council's General Licensing Committee on the 25th of February 2026. For the benefit of the public attending today or watching on live stream, I'm Councillor Derek Beard, Chair of the committee. The meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view on the Council website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to be filmed, and can I remind everyone that when you're speaking, please state your name, the ward you represent, and speak directly into the microphone so you can be clearly heard and seen. The officers here this morning, we've got John, who are involved in the meeting. We've got John Newcombe, the Service Manager for Licensing and Safety and Public Health and such like. And we've got John Miles, Democratic Services Officer, but we do have others present. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sorry, Josh Kennedy, Democratic Services.
And Graham Duggan, Head of Regulatory Services. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. We've got apologies from councillors Sarah Williams, Claudia Webb and Jane Somper. We're a bit thin on the ground, so has anybody else brought apologies with them? No? Okay, thank you. Do I have your permission to sign the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 28th of January? Can I show of hands? All happy? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And do we have any declarations of interest, please? No. Lovely. No questions for the public. John, no? No, thank you. And so we go over to John 4, the consideration of objections to the taxi licensing fee increase for 2026-27. John, would you like to introduce the report?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. I suppose first off, I'd like to apologise for bringing a single item report to the committee. That wasn't my intention. We had a nice stacked agenda for the last meeting, but unfortunately there was a technical issue in relation to the figures that sit behind this report. So we had to go away and work with our finance team to pull those together for the committee. So my apologies for bringing this single item, and many thanks to members of the committee for coming in specially to consider this. It is relatively straightforward. We are able to set local fees for taxi licensing. We set them on a cost recovery basis, and the last time that we set the fees was back in 2022 when the new policy came in. We have a statutory duty to advertise any increases over £25. That's how old the legislation is, back to 1976. Which we've done. So we advertised those for two consecutive weeks in the Dorset Echo, and we've had 5 responses to that consultation. We also sent out a copy of the proposed fees to every single one of our taxi licence holders by way of a newsletter. And yes, 5 responses, one positive and 4 not so positive. And I suppose really it's just a case of the committee considering those representations and deciding whether they approve the fee increase or not. So the correct process is for that decision to be recommended to full council, which is on the 16th of April, I believe. So the fees are fairly modest, the increase. We're looking at an average of 7% increase, which over the 3 years is quite reasonable in our thoughts. That being said, obviously there are cost of living pressures, cost of running taxis, cost of fuel, insurance, etc. So I do expect this may have a knock-on effect in terms of an increase, a potential request to increase the taxi tariff. But as you know, Chair, we've increased that a couple of times in the last years or so. So we're probably in quite good stead in that respect. So what I've done is I've included some calculations at the back in an appendix, Chair, which shows the cost of running the service. Now there is a bit of an anomaly there because we saw quite a large deficit in the 24-25 financial year. Now, quite a few of our licences are 3 yearly, so we think that's just because that was a bit of a fallow year in terms of renewals. So we're not expecting to see that again. So the sort of the average is maybe about a £30,000 deficit per year, which over the course of the last 3 years has built up somewhat to around £140,000. So what we're proposing is to cover that proposed deficit and to give a very small surplus of around £11,000 for this coming financial year, which will start to turn the tide. So we're not looking to recoup all of that 142,000 in one hit, because we think that would be a huge ask for the trade. So we're looking just to try and turn the tide, cover our costs. Now, when I start to look at how we've calculated those costs, we've got my team absolutely fantastic, and they're incredibly productive when it comes to sort of turning around licenses, etc. So we look at each of those officers, and we've got just under 11 full-time equivalent employees working on taxis. Now, that ranges from one officer who doesn't do hardly any taxi work to other officers that mostly do taxi work. So it's between 0% and 95% of their time is spent on taxis. And that would include their salaries, their national insurance, their pension, etc. So we take those figures into account. We then look at the corporate recharges, so that's the cost of running the office and HR, ICT, comms, etc. All of that stuff is built in and then shared as a proportion for the whole service, particularly just for licensing. And then we have some specific costs which are just for taxi licensing. So that's the cost of plates, of printing, of DBS checks, sending out paperwork, etc. So what we do is we look at all of those costs, and then we have very specific income codes for taxi licensing, and we compare the two. And that's what those figures are on Appendix 1. They're a comparison of what's coming in and what's going out. So the committee can see exactly where we are in terms of finances. If it's all right with you, Chair, I'd just like to run through the representations that have been received as a part of that advertising. So it did go out in the newsletter. I've had a read of the newsletter. It won't win any Pulitzer Prizes, but it's fine. I see there's a bit of a criticism on the format of the taxi newsletter. We have just invested in a brand new software system across regulatory services, and taxi licensing goes into that. So the last 2 or 3 years, we've been really busy getting all of our licenses onto that new system, getting that all up and running. And actually sending out that taxi newsletter is quite a new thing for us. We've only just managed to get that working on the system. So it did go out in a bit of a rush. I'd like to apologise if there's a typo on there. I have now put some steps in place so that gets checked before it goes out. And the February newsletter, I believe, has just gone out or is just about to go out. So there is a system in place now. So just looking at these objections. So the first one the first one's actually positive, isn't it? So it's saying that they don't have a problem with it. The next one is just talking about the consistency of the policy. Well, we've moved from having predecessor council policies, which were quite disparate, into having one coherent policy. We were never going to get that absolutely perfect from day one. That policy is actually being reviewed at the moment, and that will come to members later this year. There are a few tweaks. There are a couple of bits that we've changed. So we always take feedback from the trade. If there's any, and I would call that an open offer. If any of the trade or members have any particular comments or thoughts, then please get involved in the consultation when that goes out later this year. But actually, it's worked really well, that new taxi policy. It is coherent. There is one set of rules for the whole of Dorset, for the whole of our Dorset Council administrative area. So I'm not entirely too sure what the ambiguity relates to, because we don't see those ambiguities. So please do get involved if there are. Emails. So we took a decision earlier last year, just in relation to the workloads for the team. And the suggestion was to follow similar working practices in licensing teams where we take calls from the public, from taxi licence holders in the morning, and then we concentrate on producing licences and dealing with visits and inspections and enforcement, etc., in the afternoon. And that's worked really well. And I'll run through some KPIs in a minute in terms of how many more inspections we've been able to do. And it really helps my team to concentrate, because some of the licences, particularly for premises, can be really complicated, and there's lots of conditions, lots of representations, decisions from members. Everything has to go out exactly as it should be. It needs to be checked and double checked. And so that work takes place in the afternoon, and the phone calls actually happen in the morning now. But our phone calls haven't dropped off. We're still at a really high level, and I'll run through some statistics just at the end, because that's on a separate spreadsheet. So we have changed that, but actually it's working a lot better for us. And just a note, I've had experience myself, some licensing teams, it's almost impossible to get through to anybody. What we did find is a lot of times those phone calls were drivers, licence holders asking us if we received an email. Now, we always send an autoresponder to our email, so thank you for your email. We'll aim to respond to you within 5-10 working days, depending on what it is. And a lot of the time, those phone calls were, I've sent you an email, I've sent you my DBS check, I've sent you my insurance, I'm just making sure you've got it okay. So we put an autoresponder in now, so we've cut back a lot of those phone calls. Enforcement, our inspections and our visits have gone up quite dramatically since we introduced that new phone answering system. So actually, I think we've inspected 56 vehicles in November last year and 50 in December. So we are out and about, and we are looking at the ranks, looking at vehicles, dealing with complaints, inspecting licensed premises, etc. The plate printing, we've bought a third party on board to produce our plates. We find it's so much better, so much quicker. So once a vehicle plate or driver license is ready to go out, it gets sent automatically from the supplier. It cuts down handling it twice, 2 sets of postage, and makes it quicker as well. And what we've just recently introduced this month, is some emergency plates for vehicles that are accident damaged. So if you're driving your taxi and you've had a crash and you need a replacement vehicle, you go to the hire company, they give you a replacement vehicle, we can plate it up immediately, so there's no delay at all. So we do listen to our licence holders. Yes, so I think it's pretty fair to say that taxi licensing is definitely our busiest aspect of licensing. My officers spend most of their time dealing with the licensing for taxis in particular. There was a comment here about the newsletter going out on the day the consultation started. Yes, that it was a 28-day consultation. So yes, the consultation with the proposed fees went out the same day that the notice went in the paper, but licence holders had 28 days to respond, so there was no issue there. And yeah, there's a reflection back to the good old days here, where drivers used to be able to pop into the office, see an officer, sit down, we'd produce their plates for them there and then, and they could go away. We just don't have the luxury of that. We've got a couple of thousand drivers and vehicles. And, to be able to have someone in an office, particularly thinking how big Dorset is, we'd probably need 5 area offices, one officer sitting, waiting for each visit. And then, we just can't do that. We just don't have the ability to do that. But actually what we do have is a really slick system that 99.9% of the time gets plates out really quickly, and we can deal with immediate issues as and when they come up. And we do respond to emails, but most of our emails are responded within 5 working days. Sometimes it's a little bit more complex, it takes a little bit longer. But just to sort of, reflecting on one of the comments in there about the expertise of my officers, most of the time they specialise in taxi licensing, so I find it hard to believe that they can't get a correct answer on any day of the week, because there's normally always somebody in here who specialises in taxi licensing. So, you know, and obviously if there's a particular question which is difficult to answer, they can come to either Aileen or myself, and we've got, you know, 20 odd years experience of taxi licensing. That's not to say that all of my licensing officers are experts in all of licensing, because we cover all sorts. You know, we do premises licensing, gambling, street trading, scrap metal, taxis, you know, so we are a little bit jack of all trades in the licensing team, but actually I'm pretty confident there's at least someone in at any given time that can answer any specific licensing queries. So just finally, Chair, then just have a look at some of our KPIs. So I've got the stats for 2025. We issued 6,207 licences last year, so that's an average of 522 applications a month. So, you know, it's a busy team. We had 38 hearings. You'll be aware of that, of course, as a committee. So that's an average of 3 hearings a month. We did 170 visits, so that's an average of 14 a month. 247 inspections, average of 21 a month. And then we answered 11,423 phone calls, so that's an average of 952. So I just don't see that's dropped off at all. That's very similar to the previous year. So hopefully that's answered any questions, but of course if there's anything else which members may wish to ask or discuss, then I'm at your disposal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, John. You obviously haven't been bored, and thank you for the comprehensive report. I always think it's important to remember that the taxis are the fourth arm of our public transport in our rural areas when it dies away in the evening. So we have to, as you say, we have to support them, because we can't have them walking away because it's not workable. And as you say, we have a responsibility to be as cost neutral as we possibly can. So members, are there any questions, please?
Do you need this? First of all, thanks. That's really good. It's really good to know, and it's good to see that you've got that automated response now, so that that's cut down on the work there. I'm just wondering, because I'm involved with the transformation programme. I'm just wondering what you're looking at in terms of AI to help you with those jobs. You don't need to answer me that now, but I'd be interested to know at some time in the future. I've got another question, but it's not related to this, so if I could mention it a bit later, Derek, if that would be okay? Okay, thank you.
Before we take a vote? Or no, afterwards. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a really good point, actually. So we are always looking at ways to streamline the service and to run it better. So we've very recently introduced a brand new DBS checking so any driver has to have an enhanced disclosure from the Disclosure and Barring Service. Now, I used to have one full-time officer working constantly on those 6 monthly renewals. So every 6 months, every driver and operator has to do a DBS disclosure, and that took up a lot of time. And also, it's a responsibility for the driver to make sure they've done it as well. So that sits within them. We've recently changed over to a new system where that's all done automatically. The company, every 2 weeks, they check that DBS disclosure and they notify us of any changes. Now, that's a very, very modest price increase to get all of that work done, but actually really, really good on safeguarding, because we get to hear about convictions and cautions straight away, but also it makes it a lot easier for drivers and licence holders because they don't have to do it themselves every 6 months. So that's one of the changes we brought in. We also brought in the automated plate production, so the plates don't come to us. We don't have to print them off, put them through the press, bag them up, send them out. invite the drivers in to pick them up. All of that has been automated now. So there's a third-party fulfillment company that produces those directly and sends them straight out to the driver. So it's next day delivery on the vast majority of the plates. So we've brought both of those in. In terms of AI, I'm not too sure how AI could help us in taxi licensing, but we are looking at it in licensing in general. So we've got a project underway at the moment for safety advisory groups, where we have maybe 100 big events come through the safety advisory group. We're going to start putting those event management plans through AI to produce a summary that we can circulate. So, you know, the 30 odd people that sit on the SAG don't have to spend hours and hours traipsing through it. So we are looking at introducing that, but I would be really happy to have a conversation about that, how that might help taxi licensing, for sure. Thank you, Chair.
Are you happy with that, Kate? I think it's important that the points that we make over and over again about licensing, it's so varied, and the questions are so interesting and varied, as I say, that AI wouldn't always be the appropriate approach, would it? But it would be in setting up licenses and so on at the base plate. Thank you. Are there any more questions, please? Okay, in which case, may I have a proposer that we send this to full council? Would you like to say who you are, Jack?
Councillor Jack Jeans, Shaftesbury Ward. I'm happy to propose. I think it's sensible to increase the fee, if I'm honest.
And a seconder, please. Emma, would you like to?
Councillor Emma Parker, I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And all those in favour? Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you very much for putting it together. Thank you for coming. I think of all the things you've said, we used to not enjoy, because they were quite challenging, offering taxi drivers an opportunity to come in once a year or so just to have a face-to-face chat. I don't really think that's a good idea or not, just about the things that happen in their day-to-day lives, how we can make them better, how they can help us, we can help them. Just a thought maybe for the future.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're just in the process of organising another taxi forum. So I think last time we held one was about over a year ago, but it was here in the council chamber, and it was really constructive. So yes, we're in the process of organising that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Kate, you'd like to bring up something else?
It's really just a question. I know that in Weymouth, where most of my expertise I have is based, we always said we wouldn't have Uber in Weymouth. And I understand from having used a car the other day that there's Uber around the rest of the county. Do we have Uber in Weymouth now, or are we considering it?
Thank you, Chair. We do, yes. So Uber made an application for an operator's licence quite some time ago and have been busy recruiting drivers. We wouldn't be minded to stop them in any case, but actually we can't stop them. So we met with them and we talked through about, because they had some issues in London in terms of safeguarding, where they lost their operator licence briefly. So we had a couple of meetings with them just to talk about their safeguarding and their standards and how they make sure that we don't see any of those problems. I think they already had an operator's licence in New Forest and BCP, so it was only a matter of time till they expanded over to Dorset. They are here, they are recruiting drivers. We do have a slight anomaly in Weymouth in as much as we've kept that zone for Hackney carriages, so it's restricted. So we don't, that's, you know, they're not able to get Hackney carriage licenses, but they are a private hire operator, which means that you can book online and they'll come and pick you up. That is in operation, yes, across Dorset. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we've got no urgent items, have we, John? No. So at 10:25, I'll thank you for your attendance and close the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much.